The faint, rhythmic thumping, almost like a trapped, frantic bird, was what first snagged Alex Ramsey's attention. It was a suffocatingly hot July afternoon, the kind where the very air felt like a sodden, superheated wool blanket draped oppressively over the world, stealing breath and energy. Alex was walking home from the local gym the long way round through Willow Creek Estates, trying to clear their head after a particularly grueling morning training session with their Specialized Child Rescue Unit CRU. The sound was a tiny, desperate anomaly in the sun-drenched, almost unnerving stillness of the suburban cul-de-sac, a frantic, irregular heartbeat in the oppressive silence. Then came a whimper, thin and reedy, quickly muffled as if by a small hand, followed by another, then a distinct, frantic scrabbling noise that scraped at Alex's nerves. Alex froze mid-stride, every sense suddenly almost painfully on high alert. Years of intensive CRU training kicked in, overriding the civilian placidity of the moment, transforming them from resident to responder. The sounds were emanating from the direction of the large communal HOA dumpster, tucked away in a concrete alcove behind a somewhat dilapidated lattice fence at the edge of the community green space. It was a hulking metal beast, painted a drab institutional olive green, its heavy lids usually securely closed. Today, one lid was slightly ominously ajar. An unease cold and sharp, despite the sweltering humid heat, pricked at Alex's skin. Children, including the neighborhood's small cohort of special needs kids, sometimes played hide-and-seek around this area, though their parents generally discouraged it due to the dumpster's proximity. But this didn't sound like play. This sounded like genuine, rising distress. Alex moved quietly, swiftly, their trainers barely making a sound on the parched, yellowing grass. As they neared the dumpster, the thumping grew more insistent, accompanied now by small, choked, almost desperate cries. "Hello," Alex called out, their voice deliberately calm, but carrying an undeniable undercurrent of authority. "Is anyone in there? Can you hear me?" A sudden, terrified silence. Then a renewed burst of frantic scrabbling from within, and a high-pitched, almost inaudible keen that twisted something cold and sharp in Alex's gut. Children. There were definitely children in there. Why? The questions hammered at Alex even as they reached the dumpster, their heart thudding a heavy, anxious rhythm against their ribs. The metal was radiating the day's accumulated heat, like an oven hot enough to be uncomfortable to the touch. The smell, a cloying, sickening mix of sun-baked garbage, decaying organic matter, and something else, something acrid and sourly fearful, hit them like a physical wave. Alex's eyes immediately scanned the area. Their gaze fell on Mr. Henderson, an elderly, notoriously curmudgeonly resident who was tending his prize-winning roses in his yard that directly backed onto the green space. He'd made numerous complaints to the HOA about the noise the children made, particularly Lily, Jamie, and Sam. Just last week, Alex had overheard him muttering loudly about those damn kids needing to be taught a lesson about respecting other people's peace and quiet. Beat dog. He looked up, saw Alex, and scowled before pointedly turning his back. A flicker of suspicion, unwelcome but undeniable, crossed Alex's mind. Ignoring Henderson for the moment, Alex gripped the edge of the heavy metal lid. "It's okay," Alex said, pitching their voice to be as reassuring and gentle as possible, the tone they had professionally honed over countless calls to soothe terrified, trapped youngsters. "I'm here to help. My name is Alex. I'm going to open the lid now." With a grunt of effort, Alex heaved the massive, surprisingly heavy metal lid upwards. The sight that greeted them stole their breath and sent a jolt of icy, visceral fury through their veins, quickly followed by a wave of professional focus. 3 small children were huddled together at the bottom of the deep, cavernous bin, amidst a scattering of discarded lawn clippings, sharp-edged plastic containers, and overflowing, foul-smelling plastic bags. Their small faces were streaked with tears and grime, their eyes wide with terror and confusion. Alex recognized them instantly, their hearts sinking. There was Lily, a sweet-natured 7-year-old with Down syndrome who always had a bright, infectious smile and a cheerful wave for everyone she met. Next to her 8-year-old Jamie, who was on the autism spectrum and often communicated through a series of intricate gestures, his favorite picture cards and a few cherished specific words, was rocking back and forth, his small hands flapping in agitation, his face pale and sweaty. And cowering behind them, looking utterly lost and terrified, was 6-year-old Sam, who used a pair of bright red crutches to navigate his world due to spina bifida. One of his small crutches lay forlornly on a pile of sodden trash bags, the other still clutched in his hand. All three were well-known special needs, children from their neighborhood, beloved for their gentle natures and their joyful, if sometimes uninhibited and noisy play in the community park. The heat inside the bin was visibly, tangibly suffocating. Shimmering waves rose from the decomposing refuse, and the air was thick and foul. How long had they been in there? An hour more. Who could possibly do something so monstrous, so deliberately cruel? The central question screamed in Alex's mind, even as their training took over a cold, methodical calm, overlaying the simmering rage. Lily, Jamie, Sam, it's Alex. You're safe now. I'm going to get you out of there, okay? Lily looked up, a flicker of recognition dawning in her tear-filled, unfocused eyes. Alex, she whispered, her voice hoarse and weak. Jamie made a small distressed sound and pointed a trembling finger towards the top of the dumpster, then mimed a lid closing heavily and a distinct clicking sound. A lock. Alex's eyes shot to the outside of the dumpster. There was a heavy-duty hasp, crudely welded but sturdy, attached to the lid and the side of the bin. And threaded through it, a thick, gleaming brass padlock, looking incongruously new, shone dully in the harsh afternoon sun. Someone hadn't just closed these children in, they had deliberately, maliciously locked them in a metal dumpster, on one of the hottest, most dangerously humid days of the year. This wasn't some terrible, tragic accident. This was a calculated, intentional act of unimaginable cruelty bordering on attempted murder. Alex's demanding work as the leader of a specialized child rescue unit had exposed them to the darkest, most depraved sides of human behavior, to negligence and malice, in forms that would make most ordinary people recoil in horror. They had rappelled down treacherous wells, crawled through collapsed, unstable structures, and navigated hazardous, contaminated terrains, all to reach children in dire peril. They had faced down violent abusers and comforted the deeply traumatized. But this in their own neighborhood, a place that was supposed to be a sanctuary, a safe haven for families, felt chillingly different. This felt intensely personal, a grotesque violation of a shared sanctuary. The professional calm Alex usually maintained with an iron will in a crisis was there a steadying, necessary force, but beneath it, a cold, hard, righteous rage began to build a silent promise of retribution for whoever had perpetrated this atrocity against these vulnerable, innocent children. First rescue. Always rescue first. Okay, guys, hang tight for me, Alex said, their voice a reassuring balm, projecting confidence they didn't entirely feel about the speed of rescue. I need to get some help to get this lock off. It's going to be very quick. You're all being so incredibly brave. They pulled out their phone, their fingers flying over the keypad, dialing 911. This is Unit Leader Alex Ramsey, CRU. They said their official designation and unit name, cutting through any potential dispatcher delay or misinterpretation of urgency. I have an active child endangerment situation, code 3. 3 special needs minors, locked in an industrial dumpster, suffering from severe heat exposure. Location is Willow Creek Estates, HOA Common Area Dumpster, adjacent to the green space off Willow Creek Drive. Requesting immediate fire rescue for forcible entry with bolt cutters and full EMS support for medical evaluation and transport. And I need a primary patrol unit. This is a confirmed crime scene, possible aggravated assault or attempted homicide. While waiting for the wail of sirens, Alex tried to keep the children calm, talking to them in low, soothing tones, asking Lily about her favorite princess, Jamie about his dinosaur collection, Sam about the superhero stickers on his crutches, anything to distract them from the oppressive heat, the suffocating smell, and the sheer terror of their situation. The metal sides of the dumpster were like a furnace, radiating intense heat inwards. Lily was starting to look dangerously listless, her breathing shallow and rapid. Sam was crying silently, his small face pale and clammy. Jamie was still rocking, his agitation escalating, his breathing becoming audibly distressed. Alex knew with a sickening certainty that they didn't have much time. The heat inside that sealed metal container would be rising exponentially, creating an oven-like environment. The approaching wail of sirens, usually a sound that brought a knot of anticipatory tension to Alex's stomach on a call, was now the sweetest, most welcome music they had ever heard. The fire truck from Station 3 engine, roaring, and an ambulance arrived, with commendable life-saving speed, followed closely by a police cruiser lights flashing. Alex quickly briefed Fire Captain Dave Miller, a burly no-nonsense veteran with whom they'd worked on numerous difficult calls. Padlocked shut, Dave. 3 kids inside, all special needs. Alex said, their voice tight with controlled fury. What in God's name happened here, Alex? Who would do this? Miller exclaimed, his usually jovial face, grim and stony, as he took in the scene, his eyes flicking to the gleaming padlock. That's what we're going to find out, Dave. Alex replied, their voice dangerously quiet. Let's get them out first. They're in bad shape. So, the firefighters, efficient and practiced, brought out a pair of heavy-duty hydraulic bolt cutters. With a sickening metallic crunch, the brass padlock snapped. As 2 firefighters heaved the heavy lid fully open, Alex was already positioning himself to help lift the children out the stench of hot garbage and fear assaulting their nostrils. The wave of fetid, superheated air that washed out of the bin was nauseating, making even the hardened firefighters recoil momentarily. One by one, the children were carefully, gently lifted from their metal prison. Paramedics were immediately at their sides, their movements swift and professional, checking, vital signs, administering oxygen, offering small sips of water. Lily was terrifyingly limp, her skin flushed scarlet and dangerously hot to the touch. A paramedic immediately started an IV line. Jamie was disoriented and overwhelmed, shrinking away from the sudden flurry of people and noise, his eyes wide and unseeing. Sam, brave little Sam, clung tightly to the firefighter who carried him, his small body trembling uncontrollably, his sobs now audible. Their parents, alerted by a quick-thinking neighbor who had seen the commotion and recognized Alex, began to arrive, their faces etched with confusion, then disbelief, then dawning horror, as they saw the condition of their children and understood the gravity of what had happened. The scene rapidly became a chaotic, emotionally charged mix of parents' anguished cries, hushed, horrified questions from gathering neighbors, and the focused professional movements of the emergency responders. Alex watched a tight, painful knot forming in their chest. These children were safe for now, but the anger remained cold and sharp and demanding justice. Who did this, and why? As the paramedics worked, and the first responding police officer, a young but competent woman named Ramirez, began taking preliminary statements from the distraught, almost hysterical parents, Alex started their own mental inventory of the neighborhood dynamics, the undercurrents of tension beneath Willow Creek's placid surface. Willow Creek Estates was on the surface idyllic. Perfectly manicured lawns, freshly painted fences in approved HOA colors, a pervasive sense of order that was almost suffocating at times. And at the heart of that order, ensuring its rigorous, often pedantic enforcement, was Karen Albright, the formidable HOA president. Karen Albright was a woman who seemed to view the world, and particularly her small fiefdom of Willow Creek, as a series of potential infractions against her personally curated, unyieldingly high standards. She was in her late 50s with a helmet of perfectly coiffed, unnaturally blonde hair, a ramrod straight posture that brooked no dissent, and piercing blue eyes that missed nothing, especially if it could be deemed a violation of the extensive labyrinthine HOA covenant. Alex had had a few minor though memorable run-ins with her, a polite but firm discussion about the precise, allowable height of a basketball hoop, a sharply worded notice about lawn edging that was apparently 1/4 of an inch too high, according to Section 4, Subsection B, Paragraph 3. Karen thrived on control, on the minutiae of rules, on wielding her petty power. And Karen Alex, recalled with a growing, sickening chill, had made her feelings about the special needs children in the community quite clear, albeit usually couched in carefully coded, passive-aggressive language. Just a few months prior, at a contentious HOA meeting Alex had attended, Karen had brought up the ongoing issue of children playing in the community green space. While we all value the joyous laughter of children, she had intoned her gaze, sweeping the room and lingering for a fraction of a second too long, with pointed significance on the parents of Lily, Jamie, and Sam. We must also consider the noise levels and the, shall we say, robustness of some of the play. Certain activities and certain individuals might be better suited to private backyards to ensure the tranquility, property values, and overall enjoyment of all residents. The implication had been clear, the thinly veiled animosity palpable. The targeted parents had exchanged uneasy, pained glances, but had said nothing clearly unwilling to provoke Karen's notorious vindictive ire. Alex had made a mental note of it at the time, a faint but distinct alarm bell ringing in their mind. After that meeting, the rising action of Karen's subtle but insidious campaign had begun. Anonymous complaints started appearing with increasing frequency in the HOA suggestion box about unsupervised children, excessive noise, and disruptive behavior. Always vague, never naming names, but everyone in the community knew who was being targeted. Then Karen had attempted to ram through a new rule restricting the use of all wheeled toys, tricycles, scooters, and by clear implication, Sam's essential crutches and Jamie's favorite red wagon, from the paved pathways in the green space, citing nebulous safety concerns and potential insurance liabilities. This was a clear, undeniable attempt to curtail their freedom, to make them and their families feel unwelcome, to effectively banish them from the shared community space. Alex, along with several other more reasonable and compassionate HOA members, had managed to narrowly vote it down, pointing out its blatantly discriminatory nature and potential legal ramifications. But Karen had been visibly, almost incandescently furious at being thwarted. That was the first significant shocker for Alex, her chilling willingness to codify her prejudice into official HOA policy. The second shocker, a more direct and malicious act, had occurred a few weeks later. A small, newly installed adaptive playground structure in the green space, funded by community donations and specifically designed for children of all abilities, had been vandalized overnight. Swing seats were slashed with a sharp instrument, safety handholds on the climbing frame were deliberately loosened, and offensive derogatory graffiti hastily painted over by horrified parents, before most residents saw it, had hinted at the children's disabilities. There was no direct proof linking Karen Albright to the vandalism, but the incident had occurred just days after she'd lost the contentious vote on the wheeled toys rule. The air in the neighborhood had grown thick with unspoken accusations, fear, and a deepening sense of unease. Alex remembered seeing Karen watching from her pristine living room window that morning, a smug, almost satisfied smirk on her face as the distraught parents tried to repair the damage to their children's cherished play area. And now this, the dumpster. This wasn't just a petty rule change or anonymous harassment. This was a direct, life-threatening assault on helpless children. As the children were being carefully loaded into ambulances for immediate transport to the hospital for a full checkup and treatment for heat stroke and dehydration, standard procedure for severe heat exposure and suspected felonious abuse, Alex's gaze swept the cordoned-off scene. The discarded broken padlock lay on the scorched grass near the dumpster. It looked brand new, the brass still shiny. Freshly bought, perhaps. The dumpster itself was now a grim focal point surrounded by yellow police tape. Officer Ramirez was talking to a visibly shaken Mrs. Gable, an elderly resident whose meticulously maintained garden backed onto the green space. Mr. Henderson, Alex noted, had retreated inside his house, drawing his curtains. Alex walked over. "Officer Ramirez, anything I can assist with? I'm Alex Ramsey, Child Rescue Unit leader. I was first on scene and initiated the 911 call." Ramirez, a young officer who looked barely out of her 20s, but had a commendably calm and professional demeanor, looked relieved to see someone with Alex's experience. "Unit Leader Ramsey, yes, this is horrific. Unbelievable. Mrs. Gable here thinks she might have seen something relevant." Mrs. Gable, a bird-like woman with kind eyes, now wide with distress and horror, wrung her hands. "Oh, it was just a glimpse, really. Earlier this afternoon, maybe an hour or two ago, I was deadheading my roses, and I saw someone over by that awful dumpster. They were, well, fiddling with the lid, I thought. I didn't think much of it at the time, just assumed it was the trash collection service or HOA maintenance, you know." "Can you describe the person, Mrs. Gable?" Alex asked, gently keeping their voice neutral. "Well, it was a woman, I'm fairly certain. Wearing one of those big floppy sun hats and large sunglasses, so I couldn't see her face properly. And she had on, yes, I remember now, a bright yellow cardigan. Rather strange on a blistering hot day like this, but it stuck in my mind, that particular shade of yellow." A yellow cardigan. Karen Albright owned a distinctive, almost iconic, canary yellow cardigan. She wore it frequently, even in warmer weather, often claiming the community clubhouse was drafty during HOA meetings. It was practically her signature garment. Alex felt a cold certainty begin to settle in their gut, a sickening premonition. This was a potentially crucial piece of information directly pointing towards Karen. "Did you see where this person went, Mrs. Gable?" Alex pressed, careful to keep their tone even. Mrs. Gable shook her head regretfully. "No, dear. I turned back to my roses, and the next thing I knew, I heard all the sirens. It wasn't until then that I even remembered seeing her." "Thank you, Mrs. Gable. That's very helpful information," Alex said, exchanging a significant glance with Officer Ramirez. While Officer Ramirez continued to secure the scene and wait for the arrival of detectives from the Special Victims Unit, Alex approached the distraught parents, who were clustered together near the ambulances, their faces a volatile mixture of profound relief that their children were alive, incandescent fury at the perpetrator, and utter disbelief that such a thing could happen in their neighborhood. Maria Lily's mother, a fierce and articulate advocate for her daughter and other children with disabilities, gripped Alex's arm, her knuckles white. "Alex, who would do this? Who could be so monstrously cruel to our babies? We're going to find out, Maria. I promise you that," Alex said, their voice low and infused with a steely determination. "The police are investigating thoroughly, and I'll be involved every step of the way, ensuring no stone is left unturned." Tom Jamie's father, a usually quiet, gentle man, was trembling with a barely suppressed rage. "If I find out who did this, I swear to God." "Tom, let the police handle it," Alex cautioned gently but firmly. "Vigilantism won't help the kids. What they need now is to know they're safe, that they are loved, and that the person who did this to them will be held fully accountable under the law." Alex knew they couldn't just stand by and let the official investigation take its course, however competent. Their professional role demanded they support and assist, but their personal outrage, their deep connection to this community and these children, demanded more. They excused themselves and made a call to Detective Sarah Harding, the highly respected head of the county's Special Victims Unit, an old and trusted colleague. "Sarah, it's Alex Ramsey. I'm at a scene in my own neighborhood, Willow Creek Estates. It's bad. 3 special needs kids locked in an HOA dumpster. Looks deliberate, premeditated. Severe heat exposure, but they're alive, en route to County General. I have a credible witness who saw a woman in a distinctive yellow cardigan near the dumpster around the suspected time of the incident. The HOA president here, a woman named Karen Albright, owns one just like it, and more importantly, has a documented history of escalating animosity and harassment towards these specific children and their families. You might want to have a priority chat with Miss Albright sooner rather than later, and I'd suggest checking local hardware stores for recent padlock sales, specifically a brass one." Harding's voice on the other end was grim, devoid of its usual warmth. "Understood, Alex. Jesus. I'm on my way personally. Keep me posted if anything else develops your end. And Alex, thanks for the heads up. You know this stuff better than anyone." The next hour was a maelstrom of carefully controlled activity. Detectives arrived, including Harding, who conferred quickly with Alex. Forensic teams began meticulously processing the dumpster and the surrounding area. The broken padlock was carefully bagged as critical evidence. Alex provided a detailed formal statement outlining not only the discovery of the children and their critical condition, but also the crucial background of Karen Albright's escalating harassment campaign. They emphasized Karen's previous attempts to restrict the children's access to community spaces and the earlier deeply suspicious vandalism of the adaptive playground. A clear, chilling pattern of behavior was emerging, a disturbing progression from petty complaints and microaggressions to dangerous, life-threatening criminal action. Alex also mentioned Mr. Henderson's prior complaints and his current uncooperative demeanor, suggesting he also be interviewed, if only to eliminate him, or to see if he'd observed anything more. Other neighbors started to gather at a distance, their initial morbid curiosity quickly turning to palpable horror and outrage as the details of what had happened spread through the tight-knit community like a virus. Whispers of Karen Albright and the children, and locked in the dumpster, rippled through the shocked crowd. Some looked appropriately horrified, others, less so, their expressions carefully neutral. Alex noted the expressions of Karen's known allies on the HOA board, particularly Eleanor Vance, the board secretary, a quiet, mousy woman who always deferred to Karen. Eleanor looked pale and distressed, but also Alex thought shifty, avoiding eye contact. This community, Alex realized, was more divided than it appeared, and Karen Albright had cultivated her share of loyalists, who either benefited from or were intimidated by her iron-fisted approach to maintaining community standards. Sir, late that afternoon, Detective Harding called Alex with an update. We paid Ms. Albright a visit at her home. She denies everything, of course, claims she was home all day reading a book and doing paperwork. No witnesses to confirm her alibi. Her husband is out of town on business. She admitted quite nonchalantly to owning a yellow cardigan, but said she hasn't worn it in weeks, claiming it was too warm. We didn't see it in plain view during our initial conversation. As for the padlock, she claims to know nothing about it, feigned ignorance about the type of lock on the dumpster at all. Harding sighed a sound of frustration. We also dispatched units to check the local hardware stores. A Stop and Shop Hardware, about 2 miles from your neighborhood, sold 3 identical brass padlocks yesterday afternoon. The clerk, a young guy, remembers a woman fitting Albright's general description, blonde mid-50s, well-dressed, buying one. She paid cash, no loyalty card, no receipt requested. It's circumstantial at this point, Alex, but it's building. We also interviewed Mr. Henderson. He was hostile, admitted he disliked the children's noise, but vehemently denied any involvement and claimed he was napping inside all afternoon. His wife partially corroborated that, but seemed nervous. She's lying, Sarah, Alex said firmly, referring to Karen. I know she is. That witness, Mrs. Gable, is credible and has no axe to grind. And Karen's motive is crystal clear, a textbook case of escalating harassment driven by prejudice. We're working on it, Harding assured them. We'll pull security footage from the hardware store, see if we can get a clearer ID of the purchaser, and we'll be talking to more neighbors, re-interviewing some. Someone else might have seen something or might know something about Albright's recent state of mind. We're also looking into her past, any similar complaints or incidents in previous communities she's lived in. The children, thankfully, were released from the hospital later that evening. They were severely dehydrated and deeply shaken, but physically, with continued care, they would recover. The emotional and psychological scars, Alex knew from grim experience, would take much longer to heal, perhaps a lifetime. Lily was now terrified of closed spaces and the dark suffering from recurring nightmares. Jamie had retreated almost entirely into silence, refusing to make eye contact, even with his parents. His usual communicative gestures stilled. Sam, brave little Sam, was having vivid nightmares and developed a phobia of large bins in the color green. The parents were a volatile, heartbroken mix of grief, overwhelming anger, and a desperate, consuming need for answers and justice. Alex couldn't shake the horrifying image of those children, their small, terrified, innocent faces, in the dim, stifling heat of that metal coffin. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a personal crusade. Alex decided to do some more discreet digging on their own, leveraging their intimate understanding of community dynamics and Karen Albright's personality. Karen was meticulous, a creature of habit, but also, Alex suspected, arrogant enough to believe she was too clever to be caught. If she had bought that padlock, if she had planned this monstrous act, there might be other traces, other pieces of overlooked evidence she hadn't thought to conceal. The next morning, Alex took another slow, methodical walk around the community green space, their eyes scanning every detail, every inch of ground. They focused on the area around the dumpster and the most likely path Karen Albright would have taken from her house at the other end of the cul-de-sac. Karen's house had a direct line of sight to the green space, but her view of the dumpster itself was partially obscured by a dense stand of mature oak trees and overgrown ornamental shrubbery. Near a particularly dense patch of thorny pyracantha bushes bordering the paved path, something glinted dully in the early morning sun. Alex knelt, parting the branches carefully. It was a small, clear plastic bag, the kind that small hardware items like padlocks often came in. It was empty, snagged on a sharp thorn, almost invisible from the path. Alex carefully retrieved it using a pair of sterile tweezers and gloves from the small personal evidence kit they always carried. Inside, almost invisible to the naked eye, was a tiny torn sliver of paper, a fragment of a barcoded price tag. And on the outside of the plastic bag, a faint, almost imperceptible smudge of something yellow. Fabric dye or pollen from a yellow flower. It needed forensic analysis. This could be it. This could be the direct physical link they needed. Alex carefully placed the bag into a sterile evidence container. This needed to go straight to Harding and the forensics lab. If they could match the plastic packaging to the specific brand of padlocks sold at Stop and Shop Hardware, and if that yellow smudge could be definitively identified and linked to Karen's distinctive cardigan, the circumstantial case against her would become significantly stronger, perhaps compelling enough for a search warrant of her property. Alex also decided to talk to more neighbors, not just as a CRU leader assisting an investigation, but as a concerned fellow resident. They focused on those who lived closest to the green space, or those who might have been home and observant during the critical time window. They learned about Karen's increasing agitation and irritability in recent weeks, her more frequent patrols of the common areas, her increasingly pointed and vitriolic comments at informal gatherings about unruly elements, declining property values, and the pressing need to take back our community spaces from those who don't respect our rules. One neighbor, Mr. Davies, a quiet, observant retiree who often sat on his porch, admitted he'd seen Karen walking briskly away from the green space area around the time of the incident, looking flustered and angry. But he hadn't seen her approach the dumpster itself. He'd been hesitant to come forward, he admitted, sheepishly intimidated by Karen's powerful and often vindictive position in the HOA. Every small piece of information, every observation, helped build a clearer, more damning picture of Karen's movements, her escalating obsession, and her probable state of mind. The forensic report on the plastic bag and its contents came back with startling speed 2 days later, prioritized by Harding. The plastic was consistent with the packaging used for the specific brand of brass padlock sold at Stop and Shop Hardware. The fragment of the price tag matched their stock codes, and the yellow smudge. It was indeed fabric dye, and under microscopic analysis, the lab found a single microscopic fiber. It was a precise chemical and structural match to the fibers of the canary yellow cardigan Detective Harding's team had finally located tucked away at the very back of Karen Albright's cedar-lined closet, hidden beneath a pile of out-of-season clothes during a more thorough, judicially warranted search of her residence. The warrant had been granted based on the hardware store clerk's tentative ID from a photo lineup and Mrs. Gable's testimony. They had also found the sales receipt from Stop and Shop Hardware for one brass padlock, dated the day before the incident, crumpled deep in the pocket of a different jacket in her laundry hamper. Karen, in her supreme arrogance and belief in her own cleverness, had become sloppy, underestimating the thoroughness of the investigation. Armed with this new, compelling, and largely irrefutable physical evidence, Detective Harding brought Karen Albright in for another formal interview. This time, faced with the forensic findings, the eyewitness accounts, the hardware store security footage, which though grainy strongly resembled her, and the irrefutable proof of the padlock purchase, and its packaging, found near the scene, Karen Albright's carefully constructed composure finally spectacularly cracked. But she didn't confess to malicious intent. Instead, with tears of self-pity streaming down her face, she tried to deflect, to minimize, to reframe her monstrous actions as some sort of misguided disciplinary measure. It was just a prank, she insisted, her voice shrill and wavering, a pathetic caricature of her usual imperious tone. A lesson: those children are always running wild, completely unsupervised. Their parents are irresponsible. They let them treat the entire community green, like their personal private backyard, with no regard for anyone else. I just wanted to teach them a little lesson, scare them a bit so they'd stay away from there and learn some respect. I never ever meant for them to get hurt. I checked on them. I was going to let them out after an hour. I swear I was. A lesson, scare them. Alex, listening to the recording of the interview later, with Harding in her office, felt a fresh wave of profound revulsion and cold anger. Locking terrified, disabled children in a metal dumpster in searing, life-threatening heat was not a lesson. It was torture, pure and simple. Her desperate, self-serving claim of intending to let them out was utterly unbelievable and highly improbable, given the sturdy padlock, her furtive behavior, and her failure to alert anyone when the children were discovered. "She's admitting to unlawful imprisonment at the very least," Harding said, grimly switching off the recording. "And given their vulnerabilities, their disabilities, and the extreme environmental conditions, it's aggravated assault, multiple counts of felony child endangerment, and a slew of other felonies. Her pathetic prank defense won't fly with any jury or any judge." We're also looking into hate crime enhancements, given the clear targeting of disabled children. The arrest of Karen Albright later that day sent profound shockwaves through the normally placid community of Willow Creek Estates. An emergency HOA meeting was called not by Karen this time, but by a group of horrified and ashamed residents determined to reclaim their community's reputation. The clubhouse, which had so often been the stage for Karen's imperious pronouncements and petty power plays, was now filled with an atmosphere of stunned disbelief, palpable anger, and collective shame. Alex attended not as a CRU leader this time, but as a member of the community, a direct witness to Karen's calculated cruelty. The parents of Lily, Jamie, and Sam were there too, their faces etched with unimaginable pain, but also a newfound steely resolve. One of Karen's few remaining former allies on the board, Eleanor Vance, the mousy board secretary, stood up, her voice trembling. Perhaps Karen was under a great deal of stress. She always said she had the community's best interests at heart. Maybe she just snapped. Eleanor wrung her hands, her eyes darting around nervously, not meeting anyone's gaze. Her defense was weak, pathetic, and met with stony silence. Then Maria Lily's mother stood up, her body trembling, but her voice remarkably strong and clear. Her best interests stress. Maria's voice cracked with emotion, but she pressed on. My daughter Lily and little Jamie and brave Sam were locked in a metal box, left to bake in the sun, like refuse. Lily is now terrified of the dark, terrified of being alone. She wakes up screaming every night. Jamie won't speak. He won't even look at us. Sam cries every time he sees a large green bin, every time he hears a loud metallic sound. That is not stress, Mrs. Vance. That is not best interests. That is evil, pure, unadulterated evil. Her raw, powerful words hung heavy in the air, a devastating testament to the profound and lasting damage Karen Albright had inflicted. Alex then rose to speak. They calmly, factually, and methodically laid out the timeline of Karen's escalating harassment, the chilling evidence found by the police, and the horrifying implications of her premeditated actions. This wasn't about community standards or maintaining order. Alex concluded, their voice ringing with quiet, unwavering authority that commanded the room's attention. This was about prejudice. This was about hatred. This was about cruelty for cruelty's sake. This was about a monstrous abuse of power. Karen Albright targeted the most vulnerable members of our community, innocent children, because she saw them as an inconvenience, as less than, as a blight on her perfect little world. We as a community have to decide right now if that is what Willow Creek Estates stands for. We have to decide who we want to be. The response was overwhelming. The board members who had previously supported Karen or merely enabled her through their silence were shamed into contrition. Resolutions were passed immediately condemning Karen Albright's actions in the strongest possible terms, offering formal apologies and pledges of unwavering financial and emotional support to the affected families, and beginning the process of removing Karen from any and all HOA positions. Legal counsel was to be sought regarding revoking her residency rights based on egregious conduct detrimental to the safety and well-being of the community. The climax of Karen Albright's reign of terror was not a single moment of direct confrontation with Alex, but this powerful collective repudiation by the very community she had sought to dominate and control. Her power base had crumbled to dust, her authority dissolved in the face of her own monstrous, unforgivable actions. The legal proceedings against Karen Albright moved forward with deliberate speed. She was charged with 3 counts of felony attempted manslaughter, 3 counts of felony, unlawful imprisonment of a minor, 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, the dumpster in extreme heat, and multiple counts of reckless endangerment of a child with hate crime, enhancers attached to every charge due to the clear documented targeting of disabled individuals. During pre-trial investigations, Detective Harding uncovered something even more disturbing about Karen's past. Years earlier, in a different state, Karen had been the lead on a community initiative to build an inclusive playground. The project had been plagued by delays and budget overruns, ultimately failing and leading to significant public criticism and personal humiliation for Karen, who had blamed unrealistic demands from special interest groups for its collapse. It seemed this past failure had festered into a deep-seated irrational resentment, a pathological obsession with order, and eliminating any perceived difference that she believed threatened her control or reputation. This provided a deeper, more chilling psychological context for her current atrocities. Faced with the mountain of undeniable evidence and the prospect of spending the rest of her life in prison, Karen Albright eventually pleaded guilty to most of the major charges in exchange for a reduced, though still very substantial, prison sentence. The judge, during a highly publicized sentencing hearing, was scathing in his denunciation. "Ms. Albright." He stated, his voice devoid of sympathy, his gaze burning into her. "Your actions demonstrate a profound and chilling lack of empathy, a shocking disregard for the sanctity of childhood, and a vile prejudice against disabled individuals. You systematically terrorized innocent children and their families. You used your minor position of authority not to build community, but to inflict terror upon its most vulnerable members. This court and this society will not tolerate such heinous behavior." Karen Albright was sentenced to a significant prison term in a maximum security facility. She would be stripped of her assets to pay for the children's ongoing medical care, extensive therapy, and punitive damages. Upon her eventual release, decades hence, she would be registered as a violent offender against children. The canary yellow cardigan, mentioned in numerous news reports, became an infamous national symbol of her calculated cruelty and suburban evil. In a final shocking twist during the sentencing phase, as Karen Albright faced the true consequences of her actions, she attempted to deflect blame one last time. Under oath, she implicated Eleanor Vance, the timid HOA secretary, claiming Vance had not only known about her plan to teach the children a lesson, but had actively helped by ensuring the dumpster area's usual security camera was temporarily offline for maintenance that specific afternoon, and by suggesting the new untraceable padlock. Detective Harding's team immediately reopened that part of the investigation. Under intense questioning and confronted with Karen's accusation and phone records showing numerous calls between them on the day of the incident, Eleanor Vance crumbled. She confessed tearfully that Karen had manipulated her, preying on her insecurities and promising her a more influential role on the board, perhaps even the presidency, once Karen dealt with the disruptive elements. Vance admitted to disabling the camera feed, believing Karen's assurances that it was just a harmless scare tactic. She too was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including conspiracy and accessory after the fact. The community was rocked by this second betrayal, this revelation of a hidden accomplice, making the path to healing even more complex. In the aftermath, Willow Creek Estates began a slow, painful, but determined process of healing and transformation. The entire HOA board resigned and was restructured with new leadership, including Maria and Tom, focused on transparency, inclusivity, and genuine community well-being. Mandatory disability awareness and sensitivity training programs were initiated for all residents. The green space, once a symbol of contention and terror, was redesigned to become a true common ground with a new, fully accessible state-of-the-art play area installed, funded by community donations from residents eager to make tangible amends. It was formally named the Children's Friendship Park by Lily, Jamie, and Sam. Lily, Jamie, and Sam, with the help of intensive specialized therapy, the unwavering love and support of their families, and the embrace of a profoundly changed and humbled community, began their long journey to recovery. The fear didn't vanish overnight. The trauma was deep, but slowly, painstakingly, their smiles returned more frequently. Their laughter once again graced the neighborhood. Jamie gradually began to speak a few more words each week, his gestures becoming more animated. Lily rediscovered her love for outdoor play, her joy slowly eclipsing her anxieties. And Sam, with his bright red crutches, proudly navigated the new accessible pathways of the park with renewed confidence and a tentative grin. Alex Ramsey watched this transformation with a quiet, profound sense of satisfaction, mixed with a lingering sorrow for what the children had endured. Their role as a child rescue unit leader had prepared them for the worst of humanity, but it had also reinforced their unshakable belief in the incredible resilience of children and the potential for genuine good, even in the wake of profound, inexplicable ugliness. The incident had been a stark, brutal reminder that threats to children could arise anywhere at any time, even in the most seemingly placid and privileged environments, from the most unexpected and outwardly respectable sources. Months later, on a crisp, golden autumn afternoon, Alex was walking through the Children's Friendship Park. Lily, Jamie, and Sam were there playing with a large, diverse group of other children from the neighborhood. There were no more furtive glances from anxious parents, no more whispered complaints from intolerant residents. Just the joyful, exuberant, chaotic sounds of children at play, a symphony of innocence reclaimed. Maria Lily's mother sat on a nearby bench, watching her daughter navigate a brightly colored climbing frame with a newfound confidence. She smiled warmly as Alex approached. "Look at them," she said, her voice soft with a powerful emotion that brought tears to her eyes. "A year ago, after what Karen and Eleanor did, I never thought we'd see this again. I thought that joy was stolen from them forever." "Kids are incredibly resilient, Maria," Alex said, their own voice thick with emotion. "And communities, even ones that have lost their way, can change. They can choose a better path." "Thanks to people like you, Alex," Maria said, her eyes sincere and filled with gratitude. "You didn't just rescue them from that monstrous dumpster that day. You helped rescue our whole neighborhood from that darkness. You showed us we had to be better." Alex nodded, a lump in their throat. The fight against Karen Albright and the insidious prejudice she represented had been ugly. The trauma she and her accomplice inflicted profound and unforgivable. But the outcome, the hard-won unity, the painful but necessary healing, the strengthened bonds of a community that had been forced to confront its own darkness and had ultimately chosen a path of compassion and inclusivity, that was a victory. The echoes of that terrible summer afternoon would linger, a somber reminder of what had happened, but they would be increasingly drowned out by the sounds of laughter, acceptance, and the enduring, indomitable spirit of childhood, reclaimed, cherished, and fiercely protected. The work of a child rescue unit leader, Alex knew, was never truly done, but moments like these, watching these children thrive against all odds, made every difficult day, every harrowing rescue, every confrontation with the darkness profoundly, deeply worthwhile.